I enjoy coming to work every day knowing that clients are depending on me to guide them through whatever financial needs they have.
Every client we have is different. And so it's really about finding out what's really the most important thing per client.
With financial planning, everything is interconnected. So a comprehensive plan means that you're taking care of income needs now, income needs in the intermediate term, and income needs long term. We'll do an asset cycle portfolio. We'll do a riskalyze test. We'll do a life insurance audit or a life insurance review.
And so when we build a deep relationship with our clients, then we can take a step back and then we can look at different options to help them specifically get to their goals. One of the things I feel our job is as advisors is to introduce strategies to clients that maybe they did not know that they were out there. But it's our idea, our job to come out and say, have you ever thought about this?
And the planning it's not always about income, but a lot of it is also about the legacy. So the element of family is very important to us, and it's important to our clients.
Hello, my name is Steve Jablonski, and I'm the host of Financially Speaking with Jeff Bush. We have a great topic today in estate planning, and I'd like to say good morning, Jeff.
Well, hello, Steve, and welcome to the show. Happy anniversary, if you will. This is 5 years, believe it or not. We've been doing the show here on PCTV, so I'd like to thank all the great people here at the network and the studio right here at Pottstown High School, and of course we've been doing a show, and it's shown on PCTV, but it's also shown on the PCTV website, which is thepctvnetwork.com, and also on our website, which is informedfamily.com. So it's exciting. We have a good show today. We're going to talk about estate planning, and we're going to talk about the importance of having a will, and of course, what prompted this. You and I had some discussions over the course of the last week or so, and in the news, Aretha Franklin just passed away, and Aretha Franklin died without a will. So I said to you, I think we should talk about this because it's, here we got an iconic figure who's obviously worth a lot of money and a lot of royalties and that kind of thing. So with that being said, what do you have in store for us?
We have a lot of things to talk about today, but what would you say, generally speaking, what's estate planning for your firm, and how do you help people with it, generally speaking?
Well, estate planning is your legacy, plain and simple, Steve. I mean, it's like what's going to happen when you die. So it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I mentioned Aretha Franklin. Well, here's a woman that was worth supposedly whatever she was worth. We don't know, but let's say it's hundreds of millions of dollars. And of course, and all the royalties from every time you hear a song on the radio, right? There's a royalty being paid. But beyond that, for the average person, it could be as simple as who takes care of your kids if you die and your kids are still, little, who's going to take care of them, to, if you die with even a modest estate, a modest inheritance, yeah, who's going to get that? How are charities going to benefit? There's a whole realm of discussion that people are generally uncomfortable having.
Yeah.
Uncomfortable having simply because they're facing mortality, they're facing their own death, and quite honestly, most people don't want to talk about that.
And surveys say that over 50% of people die without a will. What is that called, and what's that look like?
Well, when you die without a will, that's called intestate. It means you have the state's version of the will. So Yeah, I mean, there's studies that, over 50, we've seen numbers as high as 60 or more
Yep.
percent of people die without a will. So when that happens, the state comes in and they determine how your assets are going to be divided. And it may not be the way that you really intended, because they just come in and they've got their own protocol on how assets get divided. It's a mess.
And how about if there's minor children without a will?
It's the same thing. I mean, you got to apply for, guardianship, and the courts. You're basically it's out of your control at that point, and you apply for guardianship, and the courts determine who's gonna what's in the best interest of the children, and it's generally a court appointed guardian.
And if we start to get into some of the tools to make a smooth transfer, tell us a little bit about a will, a basic will.
Well, basic will just says, what do you will your assets? In other words, you just say, and it can be really as simple as, in an I love you will, we call it, you make your spouse the beneficiary of all your assets, and then you usually list contingent beneficiaries for, your children. You list them in. That's like in its simplest form, but that's like in a traditional manner, in a traditional household, and of course that's not always the case. But and of course, Steve, you and I are financial advisors. We're not attorneys, and we recommend that you go see a competent attorney to get this done, because you don't want to mess this up. I mean, it's really simple. It's not that expensive, and it's just something that has to be done.
And also for a named guardian, that's in the will?
Yes, you can name right in the will, who's your guardian. I remember when our kids were little, we did that. I have 4 kids, so and of course we had to talk, and of course, I've got a brother and a sister, and my wife has brothers and sisters, so there's a lot of people, and we, made a decision of who would be the best people to take care of our kids in the event of both of us dying. Now, if we wouldn't have taken that step and we would have both got killed, it would be up for grabs. It could be grandparents, it could be brothers or sisters, who knows? But if you make it, this is our intent. This is what we wanted to do. We thought this out, we planned for it, and this is what we wanted.
So when we talk about assets, when we talk about retirement assets, 401ks, IRAs, how do those what's the easiest way for those?
Yeah, well,
to
the beauty about those accounts, Steve, the retirement accounts, the 401ks, annuities, all have named beneficiaries. Okay, so when you set those documents up, you name a primary beneficiary and you name a contingent beneficiary. So that's really good news here, because that has nothing to do with your will. You're simply stating in those documents that you have a named beneficiary. Something happens to you, it just goes to the named beneficiary. But having said that, that's a common misconception, that if you have a will, that takes care of everything. And it really doesn't, because these retirement accounts, these annuities, life insurance policies, all go according to how you've named your beneficiaries. So those documents need to be reviewed and updated periodically as your life changes.
And how easy is it to change the beneficiaries?
Pretty easy.
Okay.
In most cases, it can be done with a form.
Okay.
You just have a change of beneficiary form. In rare instances, we've found that you can even do it over the phone. But most custodians, most insurance companies, they want some kind of paper trail. So they have just a form that you have to fill out and sign that says, okay, here's our beneficiaries.
And so we've established how the retirement assets are transferred. What about non-IRAs, non-401ks, home, personal property? How do they get transferred?
Yeah, well, generally it goes through a will. It gets processed through probate. So here in the state of Pennsylvania, you die, you have a will. The will gets probated. So you take your will to the courthouse, and now at the register of wills, and now all of a sudden, everything gets flown through the operation of the will. So yeah, even the house, and of course there's things you can do to bypass that. You can set up a trust
Yep.
and have the house or any other property owned by a trust. And again, these are things that if you're in a position where you have a lot of assets, or even if you don't have a lot of assets, but you simply just want to have this all taken
Yep.
care of, go see an attorney. I mean, I know there's a lot of data out there. Like you can go to Staples and get a sample will. I don't recommend doing that. You can go on the internet. Don't do that. Do yourself a favor and go see an attorney. Spend whatever it takes to get it done, because it's important. This is for your loved ones. You want to make sure that it gets done the right way. But you can do things like getting your house put into a trust. That's one thing you can do. Another thing that we do at our firm, Steve, is with brokerage accounts, you can set up a transfer on death account, TOD. What a transfer on death account does simply is it says, okay, when you die, the asset gets transferred automatically to these beneficiaries that you so designate on this account, and that bypasses the probate process as well.
Okay. And when we talk about some of the things you might want to put in a will, like how does your life want to be carried out before you pass away, or something happens where you need help?
Yeah,
Tell us
so
a little
there's
bit about that.
instructions. It's interesting. We're talking also, John McCain recently passed away. And in his will, he had very specific instructions on how he wanted his funeral to be. So you can do that. You can put as much detail in there as you want, down to the clothes you want to wear, the people that you want to invite, the music you want played at the wedding, or at the
Yeah.
funeral, all that kind of stuff you can put into your will.
Yeah.
But usually it's how you want your assets to pass on.
Yeah.
And the other thing too that is important, because you don't want your kids fighting over this stuff.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. And you and I have been in this business a long time. We've both been in the business over 25 years, so we've seen a lot.
Yeah.
And families fight over this stuff, and it's just not worth it. But things like antiques, jewelry, family heirlooms, things of that nature. If you can spell those out
Yeah.
in the will, that's this piece of jewelry goes to so and so, this piece of jewelry goes to so and so. It really prevents a lot of heartache when you do that.
And also, what tools are out there if you mentally you cannot make decisions?
Well, that's a good question, because when I say will, there's really three documents. There's the will, there's the advance directive, and there's the power of attorney. Okay, so the advance directive is also known as a living will. So the living will says, what means do you want to be kept alive? So you can dictate, what artificial means you want used, or what level of care you want once you get to that stage. The power of attorney document is extremely important, because you get to a point where you can't make decisions for yourself. Maybe you can't even write out a check, or make financial decisions. So the power of attorney just comes in so that you can pick somebody. You know, you pick your child or pick your spouse or somebody that you trust to come in and act as a power of attorney. So normally it's those three documents are packaged together: the will, the advance directive, and the power of attorney.
Okay. And there are ways to pass money from generation to generation, such as gifting or trusts. Can you tell us a little bit about those two and
Yeah, so
advantages?
gifting is something that we really like, because with gifting, you're doing that while you're alive. So it serves a lot of purposes. It gets money out of your estate, and you're allowing your loved ones to enjoy your assets while you're still alive. So right now you can gift up to $15,000, I think is the number, per year, per person, to anyone else. Anyone. It's usually your children
Yep.
and your grandchildren. You gift that money to, and then it gets out of your estate,
Yep.
and now it becomes part of the. Technically, it becomes part of the estate of the person that you gifted it to, and then there's no gift tax because it's under that threshold.
And how about trusts, as far as maybe putting life insurance in there or assets in there?
Well, the trusts are very valuable insofar as what a trust does is it allows some control through a trust that you wouldn't normally have. I always like to say you set up a trust when you don't trust, right? So you don't trust. Maybe you don't trust. You might not trust your kid. You know, we have clients that have accumulated a lot of money, but they're a little leery of Junior inheriting all this money and blowing it in 9 months, which happens.
Yeah.
So if you put money, you could set money up into like a trust that says, okay, Junior, we're going to put you on the installment plan. So instead of you getting all this money at once, you're going to get it over your lifetime. You're going to get it over 20 years. You're going to get it over 25 years. You can stipulate it whatever you want. So that's commonly referred to as a trust. It can be an irrevocable trust. An irrevocable trust is a trust that can't be changed. It's irrevocable. It means you can't change it. So, and these trusts are used for a lot of different reasons. A lot of times it's used to get money out of your estate. Mm-hmm. And that's become less of an issue now because they've really opened up the threshold for when estate taxes have to be paid. Federal estate taxes really don't kick in until $5 million. And if you plan it right, husband and wife, it's like $10 million. So that really doesn't concern very many people.
Yeah.
But you can do, that's the beauty of an irrevocable trust. Now, I must say, Steve, because this is an important point here, and that's federal. Yeah. Here in the state of Pennsylvania, there's a state inheritance tax. And you really can't avoid that, regardless of whether you have a trust, whether you have a will, whether you don't have a will. You still got to pay the inheritance tax. And that inheritance tax is, so if you're giving the money to a loved one, I believe it's 4%. And if it's not a loved one, if it's not an heir, it's like 15%. So anyway,
Yep.
That's important because the state and the federal handle things a little bit differently.
And I know this question is a little bit more detailed, but as far as estate planning, what would be the advantage of a Roth IRA?
Well, the advantage of a Roth IRA is, from a tax standpoint, you're forgiving tax for the life of the Roth IRA. So if you've established a Roth IRA, there's no required minimum distribution like there is with a traditional IRA. So when you hit 70 and a half, there's no minimum that you have to pay. So you're deferring tax for the rest of your life. So if you have a husband and a wife, you're you're tax-free on that account for your entire life, and then you die before your spouse does. Your spouse inherits the Roth IRA. It's tax-free over your spouse's lifetime. And then beyond that, you would list your children as beneficiaries. And then when your children inherit the Roth, it's tax-free over their lifetime too, with only one caveat in there, and that is that they will have to take a minimum distribution on that Roth IRA when they inherit it. However, that minimum distribution will be tax-free. So you have really 2 generations of tax-free money. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, it's if you can incorporate that into your plan and just pay those taxes up front, you really have a lot of tax-free growth.
And estate planning is one area that we covered, Informed Family Financial. How does that tie in? What other areas in objective planning, being independent? How's that all fit in?
Well, one thing with, when you're talking about with this whole discussion is, you're acting in a fiduciary capacity. So when you set up a will, you name an executor to your estate, and the executor to the estate is acting in a fiduciary capacity, simply meaning that they're acting in the best interest of the person who's creating the will. And our firm, we act in a fiduciary capacity as well, meaning that when we act with our clients, we're acting in their best interest. So from a financial standpoint, we're making all the recommendations, all the product, all the strategies that we put into place. It's all done in the best interest of the client. Now, you mentioned independence, and the independent part of it is that when you're independent, you have access to a lot of different stuff. So you're not captive, you're not beholden to any one organization, one insurance company, one wirehouse. So you have a lot of the world of financial products and services that are available to you. So you can truly act in an independent and a fiduciary capacity when you're acting in that role.
Yeah. And when there's a loss of one spouse, there's a really big decrease in Social Security. What sort of tools do you do to implement so that other spouse is taken care of, the survivor?
So what happens is, because a lot of what we do is income planning, so we're that's like what happens before we get to the estate planning and the wills and all that kind of stuff here that we're talking about today. But with the will, or I should say with the spouse dying, the surviving spouse is going to end up with only one Social Security check instead of 2. So if you have 2 husband and wife that were making close to the same amount of Social Security, and they lose, even if they lose a smaller check, it's a substantial loss in income. So we address that right in the beginning of the plan. We make sure that we have income sources in place, and we have a lot of income strategies. We use a lot of guaranteed income type strategies, other income strategies that we put into place to make sure that the surviving spouse is taken care of through their life expectancy. And that's done even before we get to this part, to get to the legacy, to the estate planning part of it.
And I see a list here of people that died without a will.
Famous people.
Famous people.
Without a will. So I know, it's crazy, isn't it? We put these slides in here. We identified, I think, 17 or 18 famous people that died without a will because this is how important it is, and this is how many people miss it. So if we could go back to that first slide there, we want to just kind of go through everybody. Abraham Lincoln died without a will.
He's an attorney.
Pardon me? And he was an attorney, right? Martin Luther King Jr., civil rights activist. Jimi Hendrix. Now, Jimi Hendrix was young we can maybe forgive Jimi. I think Jimmy was 27 when he died. Pablo Picasso, famous artist. How about this one? Howard Hughes. Now, Howard Hughes is a little bit eccentric,
Yep.
but how much was he worth? He was worth a lot of money. So,
Yep.
people are fighting over this stuff, the family and everything.
Yep.
And then we've got a lot of musicians in here. Bob Marley, Kurt Cobain. He was another. Yeah, he was young when he died. I think he was also 27 when he died without a will. And then we've got Tupac Shakur.
Yep.
How old was Tupac when Tupac died? Not very
No,
old.
Not that old. Yep.
Not that old. How about this one? Sonny. Sonny and Cher. Sonny died without a will. Sonny was a bright guy. He was, he was a musician, but then he was also, wasn't he a politician then in the state of California? He was like the mayor of his
He did.
of his town in California. Barry White, another famous singer, died without a will. Stieg, am I saying that right there?
Steve Larson.
Stieg Larsson. Another singer. We got a lot of singers on here, Steve.
Yeah.
James Brown, the Godfather of Soul. Steve McNair, the football player. A lot of these guys were young, but still, young and maybe invincible.
Yep.
Nate Dogg, Amy Winehouse again. She was young when she died. And then Prince. Prince died a couple years ago, and I think, when Prince died without a will, they kind of made a big deal about it because that's really where it came out that he didn't have a will and the importance of having a will. Michael Jackson. Hard to believe the Jackson family. And then, of course, Aretha Franklin, who we talked about at the top of the show, who just passed away, and she didn't have a will. But anyway, this is all important stuff. If anybody has any questions on any of this, we're going to put our contact information up there. Send us an email. Give us a call. If you want to set up an appointment with us, we can talk about this stuff. We can refer you to attorneys right here in town or anywhere out there in our viewing area. And with that being said, Steve, I think this was a great show, and I think it was a good message to get out there to people. The estate planning. Don't put this off even for another day. So, with that being said, this is Financially Speaking with Jeff Bush.